Speaker. 1, 2, 3, 4. You got a good feed. You're holding good. KTVU, you good? Yep.
Ready? All right. Hi, everybody. Great to be here.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here.
I know we're going to take a few questions. But thank you for joining us. Laura? Good?
So the governor, hi, Stella here with How Matters. The governor today mentioned a lot of numbers about the budget, but one thing that he didn't say is the budget deficit. Have you guys briefed on the numbers? How do you respond to the fact that he didn't mention a budget deficit number?
I know our staff, particularly in the Assembly, the Senate as well, we have had high-level briefings. Certainly the governor did highlight the revenue picture. I appreciate what he said when it comes to investments he's going to propose when it comes to increasing our revenues, ensuring that we are protecting and looking towards the future, especially when this federal government has taken such a draconian approach to California in particular. Myself, I know the pro tem, we're all looking forward to that budget announcement tomorrow, so we can do a deeper dive with our staff, with our caucuses, and certainly have a deeper reaction in the weeks to come.
Absolutely. I think it's important for us to see what the numbers actually look like. I think it was great to hear some of the points that were made, some of the goals that were shared. However, it is really critical for us to look at the evidence we have in front of us so that we can take it back to our caucuses and make sure that we're gathering this information, analyzing this information, and building a direction in terms of how to move forward.
The governor said that we're wanting to do more, in several areas, but one place where we saw, we could see it on the floor, that the applause was really tepid around homelessness. Are you all just not buying necessarily that the state is coming up with the results that we shared?
Well, I would say that, look, this is not a matter of whether or not we believe it is happening, is whether it's happening enough. And so I think that I do believe that the numbers that were shared with us are appropriate and accurate numbers. I think the question always comes back to us, is it enough? Could we do more? And so that's something that our caucus will assess. Absolutely. And it's a big issue for us. And so I think that sometimes the reaction of the body and of the caucus is reflective of how big an issue is, and it is not reflective of whether or not we have made those advancements, because I believe that those advancements have been made.
And, I appreciate the question. I noticed, the reaction as well, but, to the governor's point, this wasn't a statewide priority for this, legislature, for, previous governors. And that's why I appreciate Newsom really, attempting to tackle this issue. We've made significant investments, but more work needs to be done. That is what is so challenging about governing California, is our diversity. What works well in Southern California, in the Central Valley, in Northern California, in the district I represent, the Central Coast, very different approaches. And so it certainly requires a higher level of collaboration, working with local stakeholders, trying to understand how we can maximize the resources coming out of this building, which are historic, and primarily because this governor prioritized the issue, and I appreciate it.
Speaker Rivas.
About the federal funding, because we've heard a lot about the budget and also about attacks from decreases in federal funding. So I'm wondering if you could speak to how you're planning to prioritize this upcoming budget session in terms of the amount of money that you're going to be trying to get to these communities, which they might not be getting. And if you could send it to Mike.
Yeah, so look, I think California will not be able to fill the holes that have been left by the federal government and the federal administration. However, we will continue to focus on this. One of the numbers that you just heard today was on the childcare space. And the governor called out what the legislature has done, what the Legislative Women's Caucus has done, and to hold that money, to freeze that money, it's not just about freezing it for California, it's for every working parent that relies on that. So absolutely, this legislature is going to look at what we can do and how we can do it with an understanding that we will not be able to fill that hole, and the $80+ billion that this state sends to the federal government are still elements that we need in this budget to be able to fill the holes he's taking, the holes the federal administration is taking, without, in return, doing what's right for California.
If I could add anything, I think it's a tremendous question. It's a great question, and for us, throughout the Legislature focusing on the budget, we have to make tough decisions, and it's establishing those priorities, especially with limited resources. We know that the out years for our state budget do not look good, high deficits. And so, and all of that is made much, much worse by the Trump administration that have taken this very draconian approach targeting California, other blue states. It is, impacting our social safety net. And so those are decisions we have to, assess and based on the resources we have, try to reprioritize what is important to our communities. And I think what is most challenging for us moving forward is ensuring that we have a good sense, and that's why we both myself and Pro Tem have traveled the state to try to get an assessment of what those needs are across California.
What is your reaction
Speaker,
to
the governor said that I'm back to the homeless part. He said there was a reduction in 9%, but he didn't say how. Were these people housed or anything like that? Isn't that a kind of concern, to find out what those numbers are?
No, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
The governor said there was a 9% reduction in homelessness, but he didn't say how these, right. He didn't say were these people, sheltered or, placed in housing. Isn't that a kind of like concern that you guys need to find out what these numbers are?
Sure, that's, happy to do some follow-up, but, that's why, my first day is, since I became speaker, oversight and accountability has always been a large part of our role. It's something that we take very seriously as an assembly. It's why we have, we leverage our budget subcommittees to have oversight hearings to get the answers to these questions and these concerns, and to do a deeper dive into this data. But happy to follow up and work with the Pro Tem to get that done.
On some of his budget wish lists, he mentioned expansion on certain things like the $1 billion in additional funding for high-need schools in California. Do you view that as feasible with the projected budget deficit?
I think I'll go back to what the speaker has just said, which is we have to go back and look what is feasible and not based on the direction and the priorities for each of our houses. I think that that's going to be really important. There's no question that is a worthy and important goal, and there's no question that there will be support for that. But it has to be aligned with every other issue that our caucuses are assessing and our caucuses are looking at, and also base it on whether it is a short-term goal that we can achieve or whether it might be a long-term goal that we will achieve. But we will work within our houses and our caucuses to be able to assess that and any other ideas that come forward.
Do you want to mention, have either of you taken a position on the proposed wealth tax ballot measure to bring in revenues for the healthcare program?
Last question.
Yeah. So no, I have not. I'm not. Haven't taken a position, stand on billionaire tax or all of these other initiatives that are circulating, and I'm not going to take a position here today. But certainly, it's no surprise that there are initiatives out there, that things are being proposed. Why some of our colleagues are looking at some certain, some different ideas to generate some revenue because of the situation that we're up against, especially with the Trump administration, where every day is different. Every day is we're realizing negative impacts, especially to our budget. When I talk about his recent his decision to freeze and to cut our social safety net programs, and we're realizing this every single day with the impacts from HR 1. Last year was so challenging. Every day was different. Whether we're focusing on higher ed, we're focusing on food nutrition, some assistance. There's no surprise. It's no surprise to me that there are all these ideas out there certainly to raise taxes, because we're trying to look for ways. Stakeholders throughout California, some of our colleagues are looking for ways to fill those gaps. But certainly for us, our focus is on affordability. No one wants to raise taxes. No one wants to increase the cost for our most vulnerable residents, and that's why, until we see what proposals we may look at, then I'll be ready to talk about it.
Quickly, just an end of an era.